She'd built an empire on ice-cold decisions and zero tolerance for weakness. But when Emily Chen walked into that downtown cafe for her final blind date, the one she'd agreed to just to get her sister off her back, she had no idea the scruffy single dad waiting at table 7 would dismantle every wall she'd spent 15 years building. Emily Chen didn't do vulnerability. At 38, she'd clawed her way from a cramped studio apartment in Queens to the executive suite of Chen Innovations, turning a failing tech startup into a billion-dollar enterprise. Her reputation preceded her like a winter storm, brilliant, ruthless, and about as warm as a boardroom in January. Employees whispered that she'd once fired someone via text during their wedding reception. The rumor wasn't true, but Emily never bothered to correct it. Fear was efficient. One more. Her younger sister Maya had begged over FaceTime 3 weeks ago. Just one last date, Em. If it doesn't work out, I promise I'll never set you up again. Emily had agreed purely for peace, marking the obligation in her calendar like a dental appointment. Saturday, 2 p.m. Java Junction Cafe. Wear something approachable, Maya had insisted, which Emily translated to mean her least intimidating designer blazer over dark jeans. Now, surveying the cafe's mismatched furniture and indie music soundtrack, Emily spotted him immediately. Table 7. He wasn't what she expected. David Morrison looked exhausted. Not slovenly, but genuinely tired in that bone-deep way that spoke of sleepless nights and endless responsibility. His flannel shirt had a small stain near the pocket, possibly jelly, and his sandy hair stuck up slightly on one side. He was typing frantically on his phone, stress creasing his forehead, completely oblivious to her approach. David? Emily kept her voice neutral, professional. He jumped, nearly knocking over his coffee. Oh, God, I'm sorry. You must be Emily. His phone buzzed insistently. He glanced at the screen, and something in his expression shifted from stress to barely contained panic. I'm so sorry. I have to take this. Before she could respond, he'd answered. Mrs. Patterson? Is Sophie okay? Emily remained standing, one hand on the back of the chair, as David's face cycled through relief, confusion, then resignation. No, it's not your fault, he said, running his hand through his hair, which explained the sticking up part. The fever's back? Okay. Yeah, I'll be there in 15 minutes. Thank you for staying with her. He ended the call and looked at Emily with genuine remorse. My daughter, she's 6, and she's been fighting this virus all week. I thought she was better, but... He grabbed his jacket from the chair. I'm really sorry. Maya talked you up so much, and I've completely blown this. Here it was. The easy out. Emily could feel the relief ready to flood through her. Obligation fulfilled. No second date required, back to her regularly scheduled life. Instead, she heard herself say, I'll come with you. David froze. What? Your daughter's sick, you're clearly stressed, and you shouldn't be driving like this. Emily surprised herself with each word. I'll drive you. My car's around the corner. You don't have to... I know. She was already moving toward the door. But your hands are shaking, and you'll probably run 3 red lights in that state. Come on. 20 minutes later, Emily found herself in a small but tidy apartment in Brooklyn that smelled like chicken soup and children's grape medicine. A kind-faced elderly woman met them at the door. She's sleeping now, Mrs. Patterson whispered. Fever broke about 10 minutes ago, but she was asking for you. After the neighbor left, David finally exhaled, shoulders sagging. Thank you for driving. You can go if you want. I'm sure this isn't how you wanted to spend your Saturday. Emily should have left. Instead, she found herself saying, How long have you been doing this alone? Something in his face cracked. 2 years. Since my wife died. Car accident. He said it matter-of-factly, but Emily recognized the tone. It was how she sounded when discussing her own mother's death. Clinical. Safer that way. Daddy? A small voice came from the bedroom. David's entire demeanor transformed. Hey, Butterfly. I'm here. Emily watched from the doorway as he knelt beside a small bed, where a little girl with fever flushed. Cheeks and her father's kind eyes blinked sleepily. You came back, Sophie whispered. Of course I did. I'll always come back. He kissed her forehead gently. How are you feeling? Better. Who's that? Sophie had spotted Emily. That's Miss Emily. She's a friend. Pretty. Sophie declared, then promptly fell back asleep. David stood, adjusting the blanket around his daughter with practiced care. When he returned to the living room, Emily noticed the apartment properly for the first time. Hand-drawn pictures covered one wall. A basket of toys sat neatly in the corner. Everything was clean but worn, loved but carefully maintained. This was a home, not just a space. "Coffee?" David offered. "It's the least I can do." As he moved around the small kitchen, Emily noticed other things. The calendar on the fridge covered in color-coded schedules. The stack of bills on the counter. The pediatrician's number prominently displayed. The architecture of a life built around someone else's needs. "Maya didn't tell me you were a CEO," David said, handing her a mug. "She just said you were driven and needed someone who understood hard work." "What did she tell you to make you agree to this?" Emily asked. He smiled for the first time, and it changed his entire face. That her sister was brilliant, terrifying, and hadn't taken a real day off in 5 years. That you'd built something amazing but forgotten what you built it for. The words struck something in Emily's chest. "That's a lot of assumptions." Is she wrong? Emily thought about her corner office with its view of Manhattan. The 80-hour work weeks, the last vacation she'd cut short for a merger meeting, the way she'd stopped returning calls from old friends because they wanted to talk about feelings instead of quarterly earnings. "Why did you agree to meet me?" she asked instead of answering. David sat across from her, cradling his own mug. "Honestly? Sophie keeps asking why. Other kids have mommies and she doesn't. My neighbor keeps telling me I can't pour from an empty cup. And Maya seemed to think you might understand what it's like to be afraid." "Afraid of what?" "That if you let someone in, you might discover you're not as strong as you need to be." The apartment fell silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and Sophie's soft breathing. From the bedroom, Emily felt something shift inside her, like ice beginning to crack. "I fired 60 people last month," she said quietly. "Laid them off, technically. It was the right business decision. The company's stronger for it. But I haven't slept properly since." David didn't offer platitudes. He just listened. "Everyone thinks I'm heartless," Emily continued. "And I let them think it because it's easier than admitting that every decision costs me something. That I went into tech because my mom died from a disease that better medical software might have caught earlier. That the empire everyone thinks I built for money, I built it hoping it might save someone else's mother. Does anyone know that?" David asked gently. "You do now." Emily looked at him. This tired single father who'd nearly missed their date because his daughter needed him, who worked construction during the day and did freelance graphic design at night to make ends meet, according to Maya's briefing. Who chose Sophie over everything else every single time, without hesitation. "You know what I see when I look at you?" Emily said. "Someone who knows what they're living for." I'd forgotten that. 3 hours passed. They talked about everything, his wife, her mother, the impossibility of work-life balance, the guilt that came with every choice. Sophie woke up once, felt better, and demanded that Emily read her a story about a princess who built a castle. Emily, who hadn't read a children's book in 20 years, found herself doing funny voices. When Sophie fell back asleep, David walked Emily to the door. "This was the worst first date ever," he said with a rueful smile. "Actually," Emily found herself smiling back, "it was the most honest one I've ever had. Would you want to try again? Maybe when my daughter isn't dying of plague." Emily thought about her calendar, packed with meetings and obligations. Then she thought about this small apartment filled with love and hand-drawn pictures. About a man who dropped everything for his child. About how she'd felt more human in this living room than in her office all year. "Yes," she said, "but I want Sophie to come too. Maybe the zoo next weekend?" David's expression shifted to something Emily couldn't quite name. "Hope, maybe. She'd love that. Fair warning, though, she'll probably tell everyone you're her new friend. I can live with that." As Emily drove home that evening, Manhattan's skyline glittering ahead of her, she realized something had fundamentally changed. The empire would still be there Monday morning. The meetings would still happen. But she'd remembered something essential. She'd buried under spreadsheets and strategic plans. She'd remembered that strength wasn't about standing alone. It was about knowing what you stood for and who you'd show up for when it mattered. Her phone buzzed. A text from David. "Sophie wants you to know you're the nicest princess she's ever met." I agree. Emily Chen, the cold-hearted CEO who'd built walls around her heart, found herself crying in her car. But for the first time in years, they were good tears. She texted back, "Tell Sophie princesses stick together. See you next Saturday." Sometimes the walls we build to protect ourselves become the prisons that trap us. And sometimes all it takes is one honest moment with a single father and his daughter to remember that the strongest thing we can do is let someone in.